For most of American history, love between two people of the same sex existed in the shadows not because it was rare, but because the law refused to see it. Long before same-sex marriage became legal nationwide in 2015, thousands of couples built lives together knowing that, in the eyes of the state, their relationships were invisible. This invisibility carried real and often devastating consequences. Loving someone openly could mean losing a home, being denied access to a hospital bed, or watching decades of shared life erased in a courtroom with a single sentence: "You are not family." By the mid-20th century, same-sex couples were already forming long-term partnerships that looked, in practice, much like marriages. Census data from 1991 of the first times the U.S. Census Bureau attempted to count same-sex households identified nearly 145,000 same-sex, unmarried partner households. Historians agree this number dramatically undercounted reality, as fear of exposure kept many couples from Despite these couples pooled finances, bought homes, raised children, and cared for one another through illness and old age, all without legal protection. The law treated them as strangers. In most states, before the 2000s, same-sex couples had no automatic rights to inherit property if one partner died. If a person passed away without a will, and many did, their home, savings, and possessions could legally go to biological relatives who had long rejected them. Studies from LGBTQ legal advocacy groups in the 1980s and 1990s documented hundreds of cases in which surviving partners were evicted from shared homes within weeks of a loved one's death. Some lost property they had paid for over decades, simply because their name was not legally recognized. Hospitals were another battleground. Before marriage equality, visitation rights were often limited to immediate family. Same-sex partners were routinely barred from hospital rooms during emergencies or end-of-life moments. During the AIDS crisis of the 1980s, this exclusion became especially brutal. By 1995, AIDS had killed more than 340,000 Americans, many of them gay men. Partners who had lived together for years were denied the right to make medical decisions or even say goodbye. Nurses and doctors, bound by hospital policy rather than compassion, sometimes forced partners to wait in hallways, while parents who had disowned their children were called in as legal next of kin. Legal risk extended into daily life. In 1961, every U.S. state had laws criminalizing same-sex intimacy. Although enforcement varied, the existence of these laws meant couples lived under constant threat. A neighbor's complaint, a police raid, or a hostile landlord could expose them. Arrest records from the 1950s showed thousands of people charged annually under sodomio morality laws. Even when charges were dropped, arrests could cost people their jobs, housing, and reputations. For couples, this meant living carefully, avoiding public displays of affection, using separate bedrooms when renting, and sometimes pretending to be siblings or roommates. Financial inequality followed them into old age. Before 2015, same-sex couples were denied over 1,000 federal benefits tied to marriage. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, these included Social Security, survivor benefits, spousal pensions, joint tax filing, and immigration rights. A surviving spouse in a heterosexual marriage could receive Social Security benefits worth tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. Same-sex partners received nothing. Economists estimated that this gap contributed to significantly higher poverty rates among older LGBTQ adults, particularly lesbians, who already earned less on average due to gender wage inequality. Some couples tried to protect themselves through legal workarounds. They drafted wills, medical powers of attorney, and cohabitation agreements, but these documents were fragile. Hospitals sometimes ignored them. Families challenged them in court. Judges, especially before the 1990s, frequently ruled against surviving partners, citing public policy or morality. Legal fees alone could consume life savings. Even with preparation, nothing matched the automatic protections that marriage provided straight couples without a second thought. Children added another layer of vulnerability. Before marriage equality, many states refused to recognize both partners as legal parents, even if a child had been raised by them since birth. If the biological parent died or the relationship ended, the non-biological parent could lose all rights overnight. Court cases from the 1980s and 1990s showed judges removing children from homes they had known all their lives, arguing that same-sex households were legally or morally unfit. For familias, this meant living with constant fear that love alone was not enough to keep them together. Change came slowly and unevenly. In 2000, Vermont became the first state to offer civil unions, granting some but not all marital rights. By 2004, Massachusetts became the first state to legalize same-sex marriage. Even then, progress triggered backlash. By 2008, 30 states had passed constitutional amendments banning same-sex marriage. Couples married in one state often found their union void the moment they crossed state lines. Legal recognition depended on geography, not commitment. The turning point came through decades of lawsuits, activism, and personal risk. Couples volunteered as plaintiffs, knowing public exposure could cost them jobs or safety. Court records from landmark cases reveal ordinary lives. Teachers, veterans, nurses, factory workers, people asking not for special treatment, but for the right to protect the person they loved. In 2015, the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell v. Hodges finally declared that same-sex couples had a constitutional right to marry. By then, an estimated 390,000 same-sex couples lived in the United States. But the victory arrived too late for many. Thousands had already lost partners, homes, savings, and children. Some spent decades together only to die legally single. Their love never made headlines, but it shaped quiet histories of endurance. Today, marriage equality is often discussed as a political issue, but for those who lived before it, the stakes were deeply personal. It was the difference between being recognized as family or erased entirely. Their stories remind us that rights are not abstract. They determine who gets to stay in the hospital room, who keeps the house, who grows old with dignity. Before same-sex marriage was legal, love existed under fire not because it was fragile, but because the law refused to protect it.